With this short demo, I am going to do a value sphere. Here's a finished example so you can see. And we're going to talk about where you are leaving areas that show the texture, how I teach you to have both the white and black charcoal separated versus physically blended. And I just want you to see the difference between this and then when you're using blending tools and having that white and black charcoal mixed together. So you'll see me use the tortillon in one variation, and then you'll see where I leave that texture on the other. So I'm just going to start with really simple tiny spheres, and they don't have to be perfect to start, and we'll make those adjustments. Like I've done in other variations, I usually start with that white charcoal. I'm going to have the light coming in from this way for both of them. I'm going to have that highlight. So remember, that highlight is that lightest area, and that second value we talk about is the area that we literally call light. And I'm just going to start that really general. Don't be afraid if you have to adjust. I come in with my black charcoal, give myself my core shadow. I'm still not pressing down super hard, using that kind of hatching type of marks to start with. I'll slowly build and lose where you can see all that mark making. For right now, I'm going to have the reflected light here still be the value of our toned paper. And if I need to darken that up, I will. Let's see if I can get the bottom of my sphere a little more circular. It's a little bit better. Go ahead and do my cast shadow. Again, that cast shadow and that core shadow are always those darkest areas. And once you have that down, make sure that you are not smearing it. So you got to really watch where your hand is resting on your paper, because you don't want to smear all your hard work, especially in this one where we're trying to show what that separation looks like. All right, so that's really the basic. Now I'm going to come in and really gently pull this value into the mid-tone. I think I am going to bring just a little bit down into the reflected light, and that's going to allow me to push this core shadow even darker, using more of a swirl type of approach. I'm going to let that white area kind of touch that dark mark. And in a second, I'll bring that white down a little bit more. Again, not letting them physically blend, but I want to have a transition area, solidify where the light is hitting my sphere. And I'll probably pull a little bit material off of where they're hitting because it looks a little too abrupt right there. So I'm going to come in with my kneaded eraser, pull a little bit of that material out that's just in that transition area, and then put just a slight bit of the white back in there. All right, so we see how this is starting to become that three-dimensional form. Got a little bit of mark on my table that's coming through. Watch out if that starts to happen to you. Got my reflected light, I got my core shadow. Make that just a little bit darker. I've got shadow area and leading to light and highlight and cast shadow as well. So we see no physical blending. Now the one over here, we're going to use that tortillon. So again, I'm going to start with just a regular sphere. Try not to make it a square. And we will adjust that shape as we go. You can see I've got some marks already. get that cast shadow. Just to note my little bit of horizon line here. Again, I'm going to start with that highlight, do that area of light around it, trying to adjust the spherical, the circular nature of my form because I rushed it in the beginning there. I'm still laying in, you can see I'm still building it very much like I did in that first one. So I'm doing that core shadow. I'm going to adjust this bottom shape here a little bit. Do that cast shadow. This one's a little bit tinier. Get that white of the ground plane. And now I'm going to bring in, because this is going to be that blendy one so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to bring the white down further, not a ton of material, and bring the black up a little further. Still using kind of that hatching type of look. Bring a little bit of that down into the reflected light here. And I'm also going to put some of the white over top. You see some of that blending starting to occur. Now I'm going to bring in my tortillon, and when you do that, remember this is pushing in the material into that tooth, and you want to think about it so that you're keeping the direction of your marks to really mimic how you want that form to look in the end. You don't want to flatten it out because suddenly you're taking your tool in a direction that makes everything feel flat. So let's see if we can get this form. Now, even though I've done this level, I can go back in and I can erase. I can add more material. I'm going to follow kind of this spherical nature. I might use two different tortillons. One for blending these really dark areas, and then another one, let's see if I've got one more, here we go. And another one that I keep strictly for this white background area, so that way it is not affecting the value of that, because they will start to blend on your tortillon as well. Okay, and come back in. I can add more light value. So a lot of people really like this, and I think for something like a sphere, it does have a nice kind of physical feeling to it. I think when you're doing large scale portraits and stuff, that it can start to feel really chalky. You lose some of that character that is nice with using these different materials. So we'll be doing a full composition without physically blending, because I want you to see really what that is like. So just try to make those edges a little bit harder. I might have to come in with my little eraser here and tighten that up a little bit. Let's see if we make this background space dark, and we'll blend that out. I think you'll really see how this starts to pop forward. So I think as artists, it's important for you to try both of these approaches to this material. You see too that, you know, when you use the tortillon and you do that physical blending, that value of the background, we're just not taking that into account. Here I can use the value of my actual page as one of the values. When I blend with the tortillon, we lose that. That becomes less relevant. So I'm going to put more material on in just a second. trying to do this fast, but also a little bit more accurate, so you really see what that looks like. And then I can come in with my pencil, get this hard edge in that form. More of the charcoal. I can see if my values, my core values, are dark enough, if my highlight needs to be adjusted, and that it actually feels like it's sitting in space. I might come in and do that high highlight one more time, and I might do that here where the light is really hitting this side so that you can see that. Okay, so it's just, you know, it's just variations, and it depends on the aesthetic that you want for it. Here's the one I did earlier as well. Experiment with this. We're going to do full compositions, leaving that tone of the page, and then you can just see that difference. I'm just not a huge fan of the way that this gets chalky. I like the three-dimensionality of this overall. It feels very painterly, but I like when you're using both white and black charcoal that you leave that value of that paper. So we're going to try both. Again, as an artist, you'll decide in your future practice which approach you like the best, but for me, we're going to stick with that. And I'm going to go ahead and, just so we have kind of that fair comparison, I'm going to go ahead and put this dark background with this one as well, so you can really see how this one would stand out against that versus our blended form as well. Squeaky. And I'll do that real quickly. Again, I'm not going to blend this. I'm just going to let the marks take that. But then you'll see the kind of character of the non-blended versus the character of the blended form. And just kind of see how those sit in that space. Don't want that halo. And there we go. Using the tortillon, leaving that texture of the paper. Quick studies.